I stayed silent until the bank spoke. That's the part people don't understand when they ask why I didn't just tell everyone. Why I didn't blow up his lies the second they left his mouth. Why I let him parade around town like a man who'd been robbed, while I swallowed every word I wanted to spit back. Because I knew how he worked. He didn't fear my anger. He fed on it. But he did fear two things. Things he couldn't charm, couldn't guilt, couldn't gaslight into bending: paper and institutions. So I stayed quiet. I let him talk. I let him build the story. And I waited for the one voice he couldn't interrupt: the bank's. It started on a Tuesday morning, the kind of bright, ordinary morning that makes you feel like nothing terrible should be allowed to happen. I had one sock on and a mug of coffee cooling on the counter. My son, Mason, was upstairs brushing his teeth, humming a song from his favorite game like we were still a normal family living a normal life. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer because unknown numbers had become a feature of my life after the divorce. Cash buyers and investors and people who spoke like vultures wearing polo shirts. But something made me pick up. "Ms. Lane?" a woman asked. "Yes," I said, already tense. "This is Sarah Jensen with Lakeshore Community Bank, fraud prevention and title services. Do you have a moment?" Fraud prevention. My stomach went cold. "Is this about my mortgage?" I asked. "It's about your property on Willowcrest Drive," she said, careful. "We received a payoff request and a document submission claiming you authorized a cash-out refinance." My hand tightened around my phone. I didn't authorize anything. There was a pause. Not surprise, recognition. "I thought that might be the case," Sarah said quietly. "For your safety, I need to verify something. Have you granted your ex-husband, Mr. Grant Mercer, power of attorney?" Grant Mercer. Even hearing his name from the bank felt like a bruise. "No," I said, voice sharp. "Absolutely not." "Okay," she said. "Then please listen carefully, because someone submitted a power of attorney with your name and attempted to change your mailing address, phone number, and online banking credentials. We froze the application, but we need you to come in today." My coffee tasted like metal. Mason's footsteps thumped upstairs. "Mom, where's my blue hoodie?" "Second drawer," I called, keeping my voice normal for him, while my heart tried to climb out of my ribs. Sarah kept talking. "Ms. Lane, I'm also seeing a home equity line of credit attached to your property that is currently delinquent." My mouth went dry. "What?" "A HELOC," she said. "Opened 18 months ago. Balance is significant." I stared at my kitchen wall like it might give me an answer. "I never opened a HELOC," I whispered. "I understand," Sarah said. "That's why I'm calling." That was the legal and financial anchor. The moment the story snapped into focus within a single minute. Not a rumor. Not a threat. Not Grant's version. The bank's version. There was debt on my home. Debt I didn't create. And my ex-husband was standing somewhere in the world, telling people I was the liar. I sat down hard on a chair. My palm was sweating. How is that possible?" Sarah didn't soften it. Someone signed closing documents. Someone provided identification. Someone linked a disbursement account. My throat tightened. Was it my account? "No," she said. "It appears to be an account at another institution. But the collateral is your property." Collateral. The word felt like a chain. "Ms. Lane," Sarah added, "I know this is overwhelming, but you're doing the right thing by answering. Please come in. Bring your ID." Bring any documents you have regarding the divorce and the deed. Demir, if you feel unsafe, do you have an attorney? I swallowed. Yes. Bring them, she said. And please, I don't confront anyone. Let us handle the investigation. Don't confront anyone. That instruction wasn't just bank policy. It was survival advice. Because Grant loved confrontation. He loved a messy scene he could twist into, proof that I was unstable. He loved to bait me until I reacted. Then he'd step back and point like a lawyer. See? Look how she is. So I stayed silent. I thanked Sarah, hung up, and stood in my kitchen shaking. Then I did what single mothers do when the world tries to swallow them. I took a breath, and I made breakfast anyway. Mason came downstairs wearing the blue hoodie, hair still damp, eyes sleepy. You okay? He asked, because kids always know before you're ready to admit it. I forced a smile. Yeah, I said. Just a lot on my mind. He nodded like he understood, then grabbed his toast and started telling me about a science project. And I listened, because I needed him to keep believing in ordinary, because Grant had stolen enough from us already. He didn't get to steal breakfast too. I dropped Mason at school and drove straight to the bank, with my hands clenched on the steering wheel. Every red light felt like a trap. Every car behind me felt like Grant's eyes. When I walked into Lakeshore Community Bank, the air smelled like carpet cleaner and money. Sarah met me in the lobby, mid-30s, blonde hair in a neat bun, face calm in that professional way that tells you she's seen disasters before. She led me into a small office and shut the door. Ms. Lane, she said, I'm going to show you what we have, and I need you to tell me what's true. She slid a folder across the table. On top was a photocopy of a power of attorney. My name was there, but slightly wrong. Elise Lane typed as Elise Lane. My address was correct. My birth date was correct. My signature looked like mine if someone had practiced it in the dark. Sarah pointed at the notary stamp. This notary license number was revoked last year, she said. That's one red flag. My stomach twisted. So it's fake. Yes, she said. But we need a statement from you, and we need to lock down your accounts and your credit immediately. She flipped to the next page, a HELOC statement. My heart stuttered when I saw the balance. It wasn't a few thousand. It was enough to drown a person. How could he? I started, then stopped myself. Because the truth was, I already knew how. Grant had always loved shortcuts. He loved loopholes. He loved the feeling of getting away with something. During our marriage, he'd open credit cards in his name, then accidentally use them for family expenses and claim we were sharing. He'd float bills until the last second. He'd borrow from Peter to pay Paul, then blame Paul when Peter got angry. The divorce had been ugly, but quiet ugly. The kind where everyone smiles in court and knives you later. Grant asked for the house, not because he wanted to live there, because he wanted control. He wanted to force a sale, force me out, force me to choose between fighting and feeding my kid. The judge gave me temporary exclusive occupancy because Mason was enrolled in the district and stability mattered. Grant's attorney looked annoyed. Grant smiled like he'd already planned for it. Enjoy it, he whispered as we left the courtroom. You can't keep it. After that, he started his campaign. He called me a thief to anyone who would listen. He told his mother I was hiding assets. He told our neighbors I was living off him. He told Mason once on speakerphone, Mommy's keeping things that belong to Daddy. I corrected him gently after, but it still lodged inside my son's brain like a splinter. And Grant Grant wanted that splinter. He wanted Mason to associate my home with guilt. So I stayed quiet. I didn't argue with his family. I didn't post on social media. I didn't show up at his work and scream, even when my body wanted to. Instead, I built my file. Screenshots, call logs, emails. Every time he threatened to partition, I saved it. Every time he implied he knew people at the bank, I saved it, because I knew something Grant never understood. If you give institutions enough pattern, they stop seeing you as a drama. They start seeing you as a case. Sarah asked me to write a statement. I did, handshaking, and then she brought in a manager named Thomas Reed. Thomas was older, gray at the temples, voice low. He didn't try to comfort me. He tried to solve. We're freezing any activity we suspect is tied to identity theft, he said. We're also filing a report with our fraud unit and law enforcement. You'll likely be contacted. I nodded, throat tight. Will this affect my mortgage? Thomas didn't lie. It could, temporarily. But if you cooperate and you're a victim, we can protect you. The bigger issue is the HELOC. We need to unwind it. Unwind it, I echoed, like you could just spin back time. Thomas slid a document forward. We have the closing package, he said. Someone came in. Someone signed. Someone provided ID. Someone directed the funds. He looked at me. We need to identify who. My mouth opened, but I closed it again, because I wanted to say his name. I wanted to scream Grant Mercer until the ceiling cracked. But Sarah had told me not to confront anyone, and the bank had its own language. They didn't need my anger. They needed my precision. So I said, I believe it was my ex-husband, but I need to see the signatures. Thomas nodded. We'll provide copies, but be aware. If he did this, he may retaliate when he learns it failed. My hands went numb. He already retaliates. Thomas's gaze stayed steady. Then you document, and you stay safe. I left the bank with a folder, a stack of phone numbers, and a new kind of fear. Not the fear of losing an argument, the fear of losing a roof. Grant didn't know yet that the bank had spoken, but he could smell resistance like a predator. That afternoon, he texted me from a number I didn't recognize. Still hiding, Elise? I know what you did. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. In the past, I would have replied. I would have defended, explained, begged him to stop, and he would have used my reply as proof that I was engaged, that we were negotiating, that everything was mutual. So I didn't respond. I forwarded it to my attorney, Nadia Park. Nadia was sharp and small and terrifying in heels. She didn't waste time on emotional speeches. She believed in pressure points. When I walked into her office and showed her the bank folder, her eyes narrowed. He tried to cash out your equity, she said. He tried to strap debt onto your home and make you pay for it. I swallowed. Can he do that? He can try, she said. But the bank just gave us what we need. What we need, I repeated. A voice that isn't yours, Nadia said. A witness that isn't you. A record that's not he said, she said. Nadia sent letters that day to Grant's counsel, to the other institution tied to the disbursement account, to the county recorder, and to Grant himself. One sentence stood out when she read it to me. Any further attempts to encumber the property will be treated as fraud and referred for criminal prosecution. When you say it, it sounds like law. When Nadia says it, it sounds like a door slamming. Grant responded the next morning, the way he always did when he felt cornered. He escalated. A man in a reflective vest showed up at my house with a clipboard and said he was there for an appraisal. "No appointment," I said through the door. He frowned. "It's ordered." "By who?" I asked. He hesitated. "The owner." "I'm the occupant," I said. "No entry." He tried again. "Ma'am, this is routine." I smiled without warmth. "Then you can leave routinely." He walked away, and my legs shook so hard I had to sit on the stairs and breathe. 3 hours later, another call came, this time from an investor offering cash because foreclosure is stressful. Foreclosure. That word wasn't accidental. Grant was planting the idea like a virus. He wanted me panicked. He wanted me to make a mistake. That evening, Mason came home upset. "Dad said the house isn't ours," he blurted, shoes still on, backpack sliding off his shoulder. "He said the bank's gonna take it." My chest tightened. I forced myself to crouch to his level, hands on his arms. "Mason," I said, "your dad is saying scary things because he's angry. The bank is not taking our house." His eyes filled. "How do you know?" "Because the bank called me first," I wanted to say. "Because the bank froze him," I wanted to say. "Because the bank is watching him like a hawk," I wanted to say. But I couldn't load that fear into my son. So I said the truth in the safest way. "Because I'm handling it," I said, "and because we have help." He nodded, but his mouth trembled. He hugged me hard, and I felt the full weight of what Grant was trying to do. He didn't just want equity. He wanted my child to doubt me. That was escalation 1. The emotional pressure. Then came escalation 2. My credit monitoring app pinged, new inquiry, then another. Grant was applying for credit in my name, trying to open lines before the fraud reports caught up. I froze my credit that night, hands shaking as I typed. Nadia filed an emergency motion for protective orders the next day. Grant responded by filing a motion in family court claiming I was wasting marital assets and refusing to cooperate with sale, asking the judge to order me to list the home. Partition again, his favorite word. Nadia smiled when she read it. "He's trying to use family court to do what he couldn't do at the bank," she said. "And can he?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not if your deed and decree are clean, but it buys him time, and he thinks time breaks you." She wasn't wrong. Time does break people. It breaks them by exhausting them, by making every day feel like a threat you can't resolve. So we used time differently. We built our case while he performed. Nadia subpoenaed the bank closing footage. The bank had cameras. Grant didn't think about cameras. He thought about swagger. Sarah called me a week later. "We have something," she said. My stomach clenched. "What?" "The closing was completed at a branch in West Harbor," she said. "There's video. The person signing the documents appears to be male." Male. My breath caught. "So, not me. Not you," she confirmed. "Also, the ID used was a driver's license with your name. But the photo is not you. It's a man." A man. I closed my eyes. Grant hadn't just forged my signature. He had created a counterfeit identity using my name. He had walked into a bank with my life in his pocket like it was his right. Sarah's voice was careful. "We're escalating to our internal investigations team, and the other institution tied to the disbursement account has been notified." I whispered, "Thank you." She paused. "Ms. Lane, I'm sorry you're going through this." I swallowed hard. "I'm not sorry anymore," I said quietly. "I'm finished." But I still stayed silent, because I wanted the bank to do what it was already doing. Build the record. Grant didn't know we had video, so he kept pushing. He showed up at Mason's soccer practice and tried to corner me by the bleachers, smiling like a good dad in front of other parents. "Hey," he said, too friendly. "We need to talk about the house." I looked at him, expression flat. "Talk through counsel," he chuckled. "Counsel. You're so dramatic." I didn't answer. He leaned closer. "You know the bank's going to call it due, right? That's what happens when you hide." I watched his mouth move and felt something new in my chest. Not fear, disgust. Because he was still pretending he had power, while the institution he feared most was already building the cage around him. I turned away and walked toward the snack table, like he was nothing. His voice followed me, low. "Keep ignoring me. See what happens." That night, another envelope arrived. This one looked official. County seal, heavy paper, bold header, notice of default. My heart hit my throat. Then Nadia's voice echoed in my mind. Pattern. I looked closer. Wrong font. Wrong clerk's signature. A fake. Grant had taped a fake default notice to my life like a curse. I scanned it and sent it to Nadia. She replied one line. Doorbell camera. I opened my app and rewound. There he was. Grant. In daylight. Walking up to my porch. Taping the notice to my door. Then stepping back and smiling at the camera like he'd just won a prank war. My skin went cold. Because a man who smiles at a camera while committing fraud is a man who believes he's untouchable. Nadia filed it as evidence of harassment and fabrication. She also filed a police report, not because she believed a uniform would solve my divorce, but because reports create trails, and trails create consequences. By December, Grant's attorney called Nadia asking for settlement discussions, not because Grant had become reasonable, because someone had finally told him the word he could not ignore. Fraud. Nadia muted the phone and looked at me. "He's scared," she said. I swallowed. Good. But fear doesn't always make men stop. Sometimes it makes them do something desperate enough to finish themselves. Grant's desperate move came in early January. A certified letter from a different bank arrived, addressed to me. Inside was a notice stating that I had opened a new account, and that the bank was requesting updated identification due to suspicious activity. I stared at it, pulse hammering. New account. Not mine. Grant was shifting money. He was building shells. He was trying to hide where the HELOC funds went before the investigation traced them. Nadia didn't panic. She smiled like a predator. "Perfect," she said. "Now the money trail widens." We filed subpoenas. We requested records. We requested IP logs and branch surveillance and signature cards. And then the bank spoke again. Not Sarah this time. Thomas, the manager, called me directly. "Ms. Lane," he said, voice clipped, "I'm informing you that our investigation has identified the recipient account for the HELOC disbursement. It is not yours." My heart pounded. "Whose is it?" "We can't disclose the full details over the phone," he said, "but I can tell you this. The account is linked to Mr. Grant Mercer's business tax ID." I gripped my phone so hard my fingers ached. Grant, business, tax, ID, institutional proof, Thomas continued. "Additionally, we have evidence of attempted password resets on your online banking profile originating from an IP address associated with Mr. Mercer's office internet service." My mouth went dry. He tried to break into my banking. Using his own office network, he wasn't just arrogant. He was careless. Thomas lowered his voice. "Ms. Lane, law enforcement will be contacting you. We have filed a suspicious activity report. This is now being handled at a higher level." A suspicious activity report. Those words weren't emotional. They were lethal. Because a SAR is the bank telling the system, we see crime. And once the system sees crime, it doesn't care about Grant's excuses. That was the big twist. The moment around the 70% mark when everything flipped from divorce drama to financial fraud with institutional fingerprints. Grant hadn't been fighting for a fair share. He'd been committing bank fraud and identity theft to strip equity out of my home. He wanted the debt tied to me, and the cash tied to him. And because he thought I'd explode and make it messy, he didn't anticipate the one thing that destroys people like him. Silence, plus documentation, plus a bank's voice. Grant found out something was happening before I got an official call. Because men like him feel the walls closing. He texted me at 2:03 a.m. We can fix this if you stop. I'll give you some money. Just stop. I stared at the message, heart racing. He'd never offered money. He offered control. So this wasn't generosity. This was panic. I forwarded it to Nadia. No reply. In the morning, he called from a block number, voice rough. Elise, you're going to ruin everything. I stayed quiet on the line for 3 full seconds. That silence did something to him, because he couldn't read it. Say something, he snapped. So I did, softly. Talk to your lawyer, I said. Then I hung up. The next escalation came fast. Grant filed for an emergency hearing, claiming I was interfering with his livelihood, that my false accusations were harming his business. He asked the family court judge to order me to stop contacting financial institutions. Nadia laughed when she saw it. He just admitted you contacted financial institutions, she said, and he just asked the court to help him hide. At the hearing, Grant showed up looking like a wounded hero. His hair was neat, his tie perfect, his voice practiced. She's lying, he told the judge. She's trying to destroy me because she's bitter. The judge, an older man named Judge Holloway, listened, expression unreadable. Then Nadia stood. Your Honor, she said, my client did not contact institutions to harass Mr. Mercer. The bank contacted her regarding suspected fraud. Here is the bank's letter. Here is the fraud unit reference number. Here is the subpoena response indicating the disbursement account is tied to Mr. Mercer's business tax ID. Here's the still frame from branch surveillance showing a male signing under her name. Grant's face changed in real time. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Mercer, he said, are you aware of these allegations? Grant swallowed. I don't know what she's talking about. Nadia didn't blink. Then he should welcome the investigation, Your Honor. Judge Holloway's gaze hardened. This is not family court business anymore, he said. This is potentially criminal. Grant's lawyer tried to pivot. Your Honor, we request... Judge Holloway held up his hand. Denied. And I am ordering that all contact between the parties continue through counsel only. Additionally, Ms. Park, if the bank needs cooperation, you have leave of court. Leave of court. It was permission and protection. Grant walked out of that courtroom with his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might break. In the parking lot, he tried one last time. He stepped toward me, eyes wild, voice low. You think you're smart. Nadia moved between us without hesitation. Back up, she said. Grant's hands curled. This is my life. Nadia's voice was ice. You stole hers. He stared at her like he wanted to hate her more than he hated me, because Nadia wasn't his ex-wife. She was a wall, and men like Grant hate walls. The investigation took weeks, but the pressure became visible everywhere. Grant's contractor license renewal got flagged. His business credit line got frozen pending review. A supplier he'd relied on for years demanded cash up front. And he started showing up in Mason's life like a man trying to plant sympathy. He bought Mason expensive sneakers. He took him to an arcade. He fed him sugar and promises. Then he said, "Mom's being mean to Daddy." Mason told me that one night while we were washing dishes, his voice small, and Dad said, "You're trying to get him arrested," he whispered. I dried my hands slowly. I knelt beside him. "Mason," I said, "your dad made choices. The bank is looking at those choices. That's not something I control." His eyes searched mine. "Is Dad going to go to jail?" My throat tightened. I didn't want to lie. I didn't want to crush him. So I gave him the truth in a child-sized way. "I don't know," I said, "but I do know this. You are safe, and I will always tell you the truth." He nodded, tears gathering. I pulled him into my arms and held him until his breathing slowed. That night after he fell asleep, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at my own hands. Hands that had signed mortgage papers years ago, believing marriage meant partnership. Hands that now held evidence folders like shields. I thought about how many times Grant had tried to provoke me, to get me to scream, to fight, to look unstable. And I felt something almost like gratitude for my silence, because silence had given the bank room to speak clearly. In late February, Thomas called again. "Ms. Lane," he said, "I'm notifying you that our legal department has determined you are a verified victim of identity theft and loan fraud. We are initiating the process to unwind the HELOC from your property." My breath caught. "Unwind? As in remove it? As in remove liability from you," he said, "and pursue the responsible party." My eyes filled before I could stop them. "So my house?" "Your mortgage remains," he said, "but the fraudulent HELOC will be addressed through our recovery process and insurance mechanisms. You will receive documentation." Documentation. The word felt like oxygen. Thomas continued. "Also, law enforcement executed a warrant related to the recipient account. Executed a warrant." My heart hammered. "On Grant?" Thomas didn't say his name, but his pause said everything. "I can't discuss details," he said, "but you may be contacted to provide a victim statement." When I hung up, I stood in my kitchen and pressed my palm to the counter. This was the moment my body finally believed the truth, because it wasn't my attorney telling me. It wasn't me hoping. It was the bank, an institution built on numbers, saying, "We see what happened, and we're not putting it on you." Grant called me that night, from a number I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail anyway, voice shaking with rage and desperation. "You did this. You hear me? You did this. You think they'll believe you? You think paper will save you? You're nothing without me." I listened once. I saved it. I forwarded it. No reply. In March, the criminal case became public enough that people started whispering. Grant's mother called my mother screaming about ruining their family. A mutual friend texted, "Is it true he forged your name?" I didn't respond, because silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was strategy, and it was almost over. The power reversal began quietly, not with handcuffs on my porch, not with a dramatic showdown, but with a letter. A thick envelope from the bank's legal department arrived with my name printed cleanly on the front. Inside was a formal determination. Fraud confirmed, unauthorized credit instrument, identity theft indicators, and bank action to release lien claims against my property tied to that HELOC. Release lien claims. I read those words 3 times. Then I sat on the floor in my hallway and cried. Not because I was sad, because my nervous system finally understood we weren't about to lose our home. 2 weeks later, Nadia called me into her office. "We have the settlement addendum," she said. "What?" I asked, confused. She slid papers across the desk. "Grant's counsel is proposing revised divorce terms," she said. "He's offering to waive any remaining claims to the property and agree to supervised visitation only, in exchange for your agreement not to pursue civil damages." My stomach twisted. He thinks he can bargain. Nadia's eyes were sharp. He's bargaining because he's scared, but we don't have to accept. "What would you do?" I asked. Nadia leaned back. I would let the bank speak again. Because the bank hadn't finished. In April, the bank filed its own civil action against the recipient account and associated entities. They froze funds. They initiated recovery. They subpoenaed more. And then, the criminal charge list expanded. Identity theft, forgery, attempted mortgage fraud, filing false instruments. When the prosecutor's office called me for a victim statement, the woman on the phone sounded tired but steady. "Ms. Lane," she said, "we have sufficient evidence to proceed." Sufficient evidence. Those words did what Grant's apologies never could. They ended the question in my mind. Was I crazy? No, I was targeted. Grant's arraignment happened on a rainy morning in May. Nadia told me I didn't have to go, but I wanted to see something with my own eyes. I wanted to see him in a room where he couldn't talk over the truth. The courtroom smelled like wet coats and old wood. Grant stood at the defense table in a suit that suddenly looked like a costume. His jaw was tight, his eyes darting. When the prosecutor read the charges, Grant's face hardened into the expression he used when he wanted to look like a victim. Then the prosecutor said something that made him flinch. The defendant used forged documents to obtain a home equity line of credit using the victim's identity, secured by her residence, and directed funds to an account linked to his business. Linked to his business. Not rumor, not jealousy, not "she's bitter." A formal statement, on record. Grant's lawyer asked for bail conditions. The judge set them. No contact with me, no contact with the bank. Surrender passport, restricted financial activity. That was the law telling Grant, the game is over. After court, Grant's mother tried to glare me into shrinking. I didn't shrink. I walked past her with my shoulders back and my head steady. Because power reversal isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just the first time you stop flinching. By June, the family court finalized a modified order based on the criminal case. Supervised visitation, exchanges through a center. Grant wasn't allowed near my home, Mason's school, or my workplace. Mason didn't fully understand the details, but he understood the feeling. One night, he asked, "Is Dad still mad?" I sat beside him on the couch, my voice soft. "Your dad is dealing with consequences," I said, "and that's something adults face when they break rules." Mason nodded slowly. "Are we safe now?" I looked around our living room, the same couch, the same chipped corner on the coffee table, the same place we'd eaten pancakes and cried and done homework. "Yes," I said, "we're safe." In July, the bank's final confirmation arrived. The HELOC lien was released. The fraudulent instrument was voided as to me. My title company confirmed clean record. My mortgage remained normal, steady, predictable, like it was supposed to be. When Nadia called to tell me the lien release had posted, I didn't scream. I didn't brag. I didn't run outside and announce it to the neighborhood. I just sat at my kitchen table and exhaled for the first time in a year because I had stayed silent until the bank spoke. Grant took a plea deal in late summer. Probation, restitution, community service, a record that would follow him when he tried to open accounts, apply for credit, renew licenses. He didn't go to prison, but he lost the one thing he valued more than freedom: his image of being untouchable. And that's what he had built his power on. The final power reversal came in October, the day the sheriff SUV showed up at my curb, not to remove me, but to supervise him. Grant still had a few boxes in my garage, old tools, paperwork, junk he used as excuses to stop by. Nadia petitioned for a supervised retrieval with a strict no trespass order attached. The court granted it. The deputy knocked, professional. Ms. Lane? Yes. Mr. Mercer has 15 minutes, he said. Garage area only, no contact. If he violates, he's removed. Mason stood behind me, holding my hand. Grant's truck pulled up. He stepped out slower than I expected, like his body finally understood he wasn't in control. He looked at the house like it was a thing he used to own, not legally, but emotionally, because he thought fear was ownership. The deputy spoke to him first. Rules are clear. Grant nodded without meeting my eyes. He carried boxes to his truck. No swagger, no comments, just movement. Mason whispered, "Is Dad allowed to come in?" I whispered back, "No." Grant heard that. His head snapped up. His eyes met mine for a second. And in that second, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Not love, not remorse, just disbelief, like he still couldn't accept that a bank, a judge, a system, had chosen me over his story. He set one last box in his truck and turned. "This isn't over," he said quietly, like habit. The deputy stepped forward. "It is for today," he said. Grant's jaw tightened. He looked at Mason, and his voice softened in a way that sounded almost real. "Bye, buddy," he said. Mason hesitated, then lifted his fingers in a small wave. "Bye." Grant climbed into his truck. Before he pulled away, he rolled down his window and looked at me. "You stayed quiet," he said, voice bitter. "You let them do it." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't perform. I just answered the truth. "I didn't have to do anything," I said. "I just stopped covering for you." Grant stared like he wanted to argue. But the deputy was there. The court order was there. And the bank's paperwork was already living in permanent files. So he drove away. The deputy handed me the final no trespass confirmation, nodded once, and left. When the street went quiet again, Mason squeezed my hand. "Mom," he said, "the bank really told on him." I let out a laugh that sounded like a sob. "Yeah," I said softly, "the bank did." And that night, after Mason fell asleep, I sat at my table with the lien release letter in front of me. It was boring. It was plain. It didn't contain a single emotional word. But it was the loudest thing that had ever happened to me, because it proved something I wish every woman knew before she wastes years arguing with a man who only understands leverage. You don't always win by speaking louder. Sometimes you win by staying silent, long enough for the right authority to speak for you. I stayed silent until the bank spoke. And when it did, it didn't just expose him. It freed me.